Magnus stood at the edge of the ancient stone balcony, his powerful frame silhouetted against the crimson sunset. The wind carried the scent of pine and snow from the mountains, familiar elements that had defined his territory for generations. At 45, the Alpha King of the Northern Territories commanded respect wherever he ventured. His dark auburn hair, now threaded with silver at the temples, fell past his broad shoulders in thick waves. Battle scars marked his tanned skin, each with its own story of survival and conquest. 30 years had passed since the Three Territories War, 3 decades since he watched his father fall in battle, the great Alpha King Bjorn sacrificing himself to secure peace for the Northern Pax. Magnus had been merely 15 then, thrust into leadership far too young, forced to grow from warrior to ruler overnight. The memory still haunted him, appearing unbidden in quiet moments like this one. "Your Majesty." The voice of Alaric, his chief strategist, broke through his contemplation. "The council awaits." Magnus inhaled deeply, shoulders tensing beneath his ceremonial leather armor. "Tell me, old friend, what excuse will they use today to pressure me about finding a mate?" Alaric's weathered face crinkled with amusement, his gray beard hiding most of his expression. "Today, they claim the Eastern Pax grow restless without the stability of a proper Luna by your side. Something about alliance opportunities slipping away." 30 years I have ruled alone," Magnus replied, turning from the view. 30 years I have kept our borders secure, our people fed, our enemies at bay. Yet all they see is an empty throne beside mine. They fear what they cannot understand, my king. A lone alpha defies tradition. It makes them uncomfortable. Magnus growled low in his throat, amber eyes flashing with annoyance. Comfort is a luxury of peaceful times. We built this alliance on blood and sacrifice, not comfort. The council chamber fell silent as Magnus entered, 12 of the most powerful alphas and betas in the Northern Territories rising to their feet in respect. The circular room, carved from the mountain itself, featured a massive round table hewn from ancient redwood. The walls displayed battle maps and the banners of allied packs, tokens of loyalty earned through decades of leadership. "Honored Council," Magnus began, his deep voice resonating through the chamber as he took his seat at the head of the table. "I understand your concerns regarding succession and alliances. I have heard them for 20 years now." A few council members shifted uncomfortably. "But today we face more pressing matters. The Silver Moon Pack has requested our presence for negotiations on the Great Forest Treaty." Councillor Thaddeus, a silver-haired alpha with calculating eyes, leaned forward. "Your Majesty, with respect, this could be an opportunity. Lady Ravenna of Silver Moon has 2 unmated daughters of noble bloodline. Perhaps while discussing treaties, you might consider—" "I will consider the treaty and nothing more," Magnus interrupted, his tone leaving no room for argument. "The Silver Moon Pack controls vital hunting grounds our people need for the coming winter. That alone warrants my personal attention." Valkyrie, commander of his elite guard and one of the few females to earn a council position, spoke next. "Intelligence suggests unusual movement within Silver Moon territory, travelers rarely welcomed, strangers coming and going under cover of darkness." Magnus turned his amber gaze to her. "You suspect something beyond treaty concerns?" "I can't say for certain," Valkyrie replied, her silver-streaked auburn hair pulled back in a warrior's braid. "But my scouts report heightened security around their central compound. They're protecting something, or someone." "Or preparing for something," added Alaric, stroking his gray beard thoughtfully. "Silver Moon has always been secretive, but this level of caution is unprecedented." Magnus considered this information carefully. "We proceed as planned, but with increased awareness. I'll take a contingent of elite guards rather than the standard diplomatic escort. Valkyrie, select your 20 best warriors. We leave at dawn." The journey to Silver Moon territory took 3 days of hard travel through dense forest and mountain passes. Magnus led his warriors in wolf form for much of the route. his massive black wolf with deep auburn highlights, standing a head taller than even the largest in his elite guard. The wolf inside him relished the freedom, the connection to nature that being Alpha King often denied him. They shifted to human form at the border of Silver Moon lands, donning the formal attire required for diplomatic meetings. Magnus wore dark leather armor adorned with silver, the symbol of the Northern Alliance emblazoned across his chest. His men and women formed a protective formation around him, Valkyrie at his right hand, Gunnar, his oldest friend and fiercest warrior, at his left. The Silver Moon compound rose from the forest like a vision from another time. Stone walls surrounded an impressive estate built in the old style, with towers reaching toward the sky and intricate carvings depicting wolf legends adorning every surface. Magnus noted the heavy presence of guards, confirming Valkyrie's intelligence about heightened security. Lady Ravenna greeted them in the central courtyard, a tall woman with striking features and cold green eyes that calculated even as she smiled. "Alpha King Magnus, what an honor to host the Northern Alliance. It has been too long since you graced us with your presence." Magnus bowed slightly, the gesture formal rather than submissive. "Lady Ravenna, the Northern Alliance values its relationship with Silver Moon Pack. I trust our discussions will strengthen bonds that benefit both our peoples." "Indeed," Ravenna replied, her smile never reaching her eyes. "Please, follow me to the Great Hall. Refreshments await, and we have much to discuss." The Great Hall of Silver Moon Estate impressed even Magnus, who had seen the grandest pack houses across the territories. Ancient tapestries depicting wolf history hung from stone walls. A massive fireplace dominated one wall, while tall windows allowed afternoon light to stream across polished floors. Guards stood at attention along the walls, more than necessary for a peaceful diplomatic meeting. As servants brought wine and food, Magnus surveyed the room with practiced nonchalance. His heightened senses detected something unusual. Beneath the expected sense of food, wine, and the distinctive markers of the Silver Moon Pack, there lingered something else, something faint but unmistakable. The scent of old magic, silver, and isolation. The formal dinner that evening stretched for hours, with elaborate courses and carefully orchestrated entertainment. Magnus maintained his diplomatic facade while observing everything, the way certain guards exchanged glances, the nervous energy of some servants, the peculiar absence of Lady Ravenna's daughters, who had been mentioned but never appeared. During a lull in conversation, Magnus noticed something on the hand of one of Ravenna's advisors, a silver ring bearing a crescent moon with a sword through it. The symbol triggered a memory from his father's journals. The mark of the Silver Covenant, a secret society of warriors who had fought alongside his father but dissolved after the war, or supposedly dissolved. "A remarkable ring," Magnus commented casually to the advisor. "Family heirloom?" The man tensed momentarily before forcing a smile. "Indeed, Your Majesty. Passed down through generations." "The craftsmanship reminds me of Northern silverwork," Magnus continued, watching the man's reaction carefully. "My father had similar pieces made for his most trusted commanders during the Three Territories War," Lady Ravenna smoothly interrupted, raising her glass. "A toast to peace between our territories and prosperous trade for all our people." Magnus raised his glass in response, but his mind raced with implications. The Silver Covenant had been his father's secret military council, warriors bound by blood oath to protect the northern territories at any cost. After his father's death, Magnus had searched for members to continue his father's legacy, but found they had scattered to the winds. If they had reformed under Silver Moon influence, the implications could be dangerous. Later that night, restless from revelations and unanswered questions, Magnus slipped away from his quarters to explore the grounds. The waxing moon provided ample light for his enhanced vision as he moved silently through shadow. His wolf stirred beneath his skin, senses heightened, alert to danger and secrets. Following his instincts, Magnus found himself drawn to the northern section of the compound, where an ancient tower stood separate from the main buildings. Unlike the rest of the well-maintained estate, this tower appeared deliberately neglected, with ivy covering much of its stone surface. Yet subtle signs betrayed recent use: a cleared path, the absence of dust on the door handle, and most telling, the faint but unmistakable scent of a living being inside. As Magnus circled the base of the tower, something inexplicable happened. A sensation he had never experienced in his 45 years swept through him. An invisible pull, a yearning so powerful it nearly brought the Alpha King to his knees. His wolf howled within, recognizing what his human mind struggled to comprehend. Magnus looked up toward the tower's highest window and froze. Framed in the narrow opening, illuminated by candlelight, was a woman with copper hair falling in waves around a pale face. Their eyes met across the impossible distance, amber connecting with amber, and the world shifted on its axis. Mate. The word exploded in his mind, in his soul, in every fiber of his being. After 30 years of resisting political matches and convenient alliances, after believing his mate had perished in the war or simply didn't exist, Magnus felt the instantaneous, unbreakable bond form between them. The woman in the window seemed to feel it too. He watched her stagger backward, one hand pressed to her chest. Then she disappeared from view, leaving Magnus standing in the moonlight, forever changed in a single moment. Without conscious thought, Magnus found himself at the tower door, testing its strength. Silver. The door contained silver alloy, designed specifically to keep werewolves at bay. The metal would burn any wolf who touched it, a deliberate imprisonment for one of their kind. Rage, cold and deadly, filled Magnus at the realization that his mate, his other half, was being deliberately contained. "Looking for something, Alpha King?" Lady Ravenna's voice came from behind him, falsely pleasant but underlaid with tension. Magnus turned slowly, keeping his expression neutral despite the fury building within. An interesting architectural choice, keeping a tower door sealed with silver. One might think you're keeping something in rather than keeping dangers out. Ravenna's smile remained fixed, but her eyes hardened. The North Tower is merely storage for dangerous artifacts, sealed for everyone's protection. Nothing that would interest an esteemed visitor such as yourself. I sensed someone inside, Magnus stated flatly. Living, breathing, watching. Impossible, Ravenna replied too quickly. The tower has been abandoned for years. Perhaps the mountain wind playing tricks on your senses. Magnus stepped closer, using his considerable height advantage to loom over her. Open the door, Lady Ravenna. I'm afraid I can't do that, Your Majesty. The key was lost generations ago. Now, if you'll return to your quarters, we can forget this unfortunate misunderstanding and continue our treaty discussions in the morning. I sense my mate behind this door, Magnus said, his voice deceptively calm while his eyes began to glow with alpha power. And if you don't open it in the next 3 seconds, I'll tear it down myself and have you arrested for obstruction of the Alpha King. Fear flashed across Ravenna's face. Your mate? That's absurd. There's nothing but old relics and dust. Magnus didn't wait for her to finish. With a roar that shook the stone walls, he channeled his alpha strength and ripped the silver door from its hinges. Pain seared through his hands where they contacted the silver, but rage and determination numbed him to it. The massive door crashed to the ground, revealing a narrow staircase winding upward into darkness. Guards! Ravenna screamed, but Valkyrie and Gunnar appeared from the shadows, intercepting the Silver Moon Guards who came running. Secure Lady Ravenna, Magnus ordered, his voice carrying the unmistakable alpha command that no wolf could disobey. No one follows me up these stairs. Magnus took the winding steps 2 at a time, following the strengthening scent of his mate. The staircase seemed endless, spiraling higher and higher, illuminated only by occasional narrow windows letting in moonlight. The tower interior smelled of dust and age and isolation, but beneath it all, the sweet copper scent that had drawn him from across the grounds. Finally, he reached a heavy wooden door at the top. Unlike the silver entrance below, this door was simple wood, though he noted the complex lock mechanism designed to keep someone in, not out. With a single powerful kick, the door splintered and swung open. Magnus stood frozen in the doorway, taking in the scene before him. The circular room was small but not squalid. A narrow bed stood against one wall. Shelves lined with books covered every available surface. A small table held a basin for washing, and a single window looked out over the estate grounds. In the center of it all stood the woman he'd seen from below, her copper hair falling in waves to her ankles, her amber eyes wide with both fear and defiance. She was small, too thin, her skin pale from lack of sun, but she held herself with dignity. She wore a simple dress that had been mended multiple times, and her feet were bare on the stone floor. Despite her obvious physical fragility, something in her stance told Magnus she was far from broken. "How long?" Magnus asked, his voice dangerously soft, as he took in the obvious signs of long imprisonment. The woman met his gaze directly, unflinchingly. 20 years, she answered, her voice rough from disuse but steady. "Since my father died. Lady Ravenna told everyone I died of illness. She locked me here to hide my copper wolf, afraid I would outshine her own daughters." Cold fury, unlike anything Magnus had ever experienced, swept through him. 20 years. This woman had been imprisoned in this tower for 20 years, since she was a child. The Alpha King turned slowly, sensing Ravenna hovering fearfully at the bottom of the stairs. "You!" he called down, each word falling like a death sentence. "Imprisoned your stepdaughter, a child of 6 years old, in a tower for 20 years. I can explain, Your Majesty. She's dangerous. Her wolf is—" "Silence!" The alpha command in his voice made Ravenna drop to her knees, unable to resist the pure power behind it. "You'll be arrested, tried, and if I have my way, you'll spend the next 20 years in a cell even smaller than this room." Valkyrie appeared below, responding to her king's rage. "Guards," Magnus ordered. "Take Lady Ravenna into custody. She stands accused of imprisonment, child endangerment, and direct deception of the Alpha King." Turning back to the woman, his mate, Magnus approached with obvious care, moderating his imposing presence. "Are you hurt?" he asked gently. She shook her head. "Physically, I'm fine. Malnourished, lacking sun exposure, but functional." She paused, then added with unexpected dry humor, "Mentally, I'll probably have nightmares for the rest of my life, but I'm functional and sane." Something flashed in Magnus's eyes. Respect, she realized. "You're my mate," he said, not as a question, but as fact. "I feel the bond," she confirmed. "You're Alpha King Magnus of the Northern Alliance. You took the throne at 15 after your father's death in the Three Territories War. You've spent 30 years consolidating power and implementing reforms that gave equal rights to lower-ranking wolves. You're unmated, which has been making your council increasingly anxious, and you came to this estate to negotiate the Great Forest Treaty with Silver Moon Pack." Magnus blinked, clearly surprised. "How do you know all that?" She gestured to the books around them. 20 years is a long time. I read everything available, and from my window I observed, learned, memorized. When you can't do anything else, you learn to use your mind." Something like admiration crossed his face. "You're extraordinary." "I'm pragmatic," she corrected, "and I have a proposal for you, Your Majesty." He raised an eyebrow. "A proposal?" "You need a Luna," she said, her voice firm despite her racing heart. "Your council's been pressuring you to mate. I'm your mate, which solves that problem. But more than that, I can be useful. I spent 20 years studying politics, strategy, and pack dynamics. I understand kingdom law better than most advisors. I speak 6 languages, and I have an excellent memory for faces, names, and political alliances." She took a step closer, meeting his eyes with surprising confidence. "But I won't be just a trophy or a decorative figure. If I'm your Luna, I'll be your partner, your advisor, your equal, or I'll be nothing at all." The silence stretched between them. Then Magnus began to smile. Not a polite smile, but genuine, reaching his amber eyes and making them glow with warmth. "I've been ruling alone for 30 years, he said softly, "and now I understand why the moon goddess made me wait. Because you're not just my mate. You're exactly the kind of Luna I need. Strong, intelligent, unbreakable, despite being broken in every possible way." He extended his hand. "Come with me. I'll take you from this tower, this estate, this life, this... I'll give you freedom, power, and a choice, something you've been denied far too long. And when you're ready, if you're ready, we'll talk about the future." "And if I say no?" she asked, testing. "Then I'll help you get settled somewhere safe," Magnus promised. "I'll provide you with resources, protection, and help you find a pack that will value you. I'm not going to force you into anything. You've been controlled enough for one lifetime." He was giving her the one thing she'd never had. True choice, the power to decide her own future. "My name is Elena," she said softly. "I'll come. I'll try." Magnus's face lit up with that transformative smile again. "Thank you, Elena. You won't regret it." He looked at her hair, the massive copper waves that pooled around her feet. "Do you need help with—" "I can braid it," Elena said, already gathering the length. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, weaving the copper strands into a thick plait. Even braided, it reached well past her waist. "It's beautiful," Magnus said softly, "like sunset captured in silk." Elena felt heat rise to her cheeks, the first time she'd blushed in 20 years. "It's also impractical. I'll probably cut it once we're wherever we're going." "Don't," Magnus said quickly, then seemed to catch himself. "I mean, it's your choice, but it suits you. A warrior's trophy from surviving 20 years. Elena looked at him with new appreciation. He understood. The hair wasn't just hair. It was proof of survival, of time endured, of strength maintained despite everything. "Let me carry you," Magnus said, noticing her exhaustion. "I can walk," Elena interrupted, but seeing his expression she softened. "But thank you for the offer." They descended the tower stairs together, Magnus staying close but not touching, letting her maintain her dignity and independence. At the bottom, Elena saw 24 wolves waiting, all in human form, all elite warriors, all watching her with curiosity and what looked like respect. Valkyrie approached Magnus. "Alpha, this is Elena," Magnus said, his voice carrying pride. "My mate. Have accommodations prepared immediately. Best suite, full medical team, and I want our top healers ready." Valkyrie's eyes widened as she looked at Elena, taking in the pale skin, the massive copper braid, the obvious signs of long imprisonment. "Of course, Alpha. Right away." She shifted into a magnificent silver wolf and took off running. The other warriors formed a protective circle around them as Magnus led Elena outside. The first breath of fresh air in 20 years hit Elena like a physical force. She stumbled, overwhelmed, and Magnus caught her elbow. "Easy," he murmured. "Take your time." Elena stood there, just breathing in the scent of pine trees, of earth, of freedom. Tears streamed down her face without permission, and she didn't care. She was outside. She was free. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for finding me." Magnus's hand tightened gently on her arm. "Thank the moon goddess for leading me here, for making sure I was in the right place at the right time, for the mate bond that pulled me to your window." As they walked across the courtyard, Elena noticed Silver Moon pack members watching with undisguised shock and curiosity. Among them stood 2 young women who could only be Ravenna's daughters, looking confused and frightened by the night's events. "They didn't know about me," Elena said quietly. Her daughters, I could see it in their eyes. Magnus nodded. "We'll question them thoroughly, but their reaction suggests they were kept in the dark. Not everyone will be held accountable for Ravenna's actions." In the confusion of Ravenna's arrest and preparations for departure, Magnus noticed Elena's gaze drawn repeatedly to the tower. "Is there anything you need from your room?" he asked gently. "Books or possessions you want to bring?" Elena hesitated. "There is one thing. A book hidden beneath a loose stone under my bed. It belonged to my father. Ravenna doesn't know I have it." Magnus immediately dispatched Gunnar to retrieve it. The massive warrior returned minutes later with an ancient leather-bound volume, its cover worn from years of handling. Elena clutched it to her chest like a lifeline. "This was the only thing I had from him," she explained. "He gave it to me the day before he died, told me to keep it safe and secret." Magnus examined the book, noting the strange symbols embossed in the leather. "What language is this?" "Ancient wolf tongue," Elena replied. "It took me years to decipher even parts of it. It speaks of something called blood-fire legacy, a power passed through certain bloodlines. My father was researching it before he died." Magnus's eyes widened in recognition. Bloodfire. My father mentioned it in his journals. A power from the time before packs formed, when wolves ran wild and free. It was thought to be lost centuries ago. "Not lost," Elena said quietly. "Hidden, protected. That's what my father discovered, and I think that's why Ravenna locked me away. Not just jealousy over my copper wolf, but fear of what I might become." As Elena spoke, Magnus noticed something remarkable. Though physically frail from her imprisonment, her mind was extraordinarily sharp. She spoke with the confidence and insight of someone 3 times her age, connecting historical dots that many scholars had missed. "We should continue this discussion somewhere safer," Magnus said, noting the many ears listening around them. "Silver Moon territory is no longer friendly ground," Elena nodded, suddenly looking exhausted. The events of the night, the emotional upheaval, and the physical strain of her first venture outside in 2 decades were taking their toll. "Rest," Magnus said gently. "We'll leave at first light. The journey to Northern Territory will take 3 days, and you'll need your strength." Accommodations had been hastily arranged in the guest quarters, far from Ravenna's private rooms. Magnus personally checked the security before allowing Elena inside. The suite was lavish compared to her tower room, with a soft bed, private bathing chamber, and wide windows Elena immediately went to, touching the glass with wonder. "I can see the forest," she whispered, "and the mountains beyond. From my tower I could only see the estate grounds." Magnus watched her with a mixture of emotions, rage at what had been done to her, wonder at her resilience, and a growing protectiveness that went beyond the mate bond, born of genuine admiration for her strength. "Elena," he said softly, "I want you to know that while the mate bond brought us together, it doesn't dictate what happens next. You've had enough of your life controlled by others. Whatever comes next will be your choice, in your time." She turned from the window, studying him with those perceptive amber eyes. "You're not what I expected," she admitted. "From the stories I've heard, Alpha King Magnus is ruthless, demanding, uncompromising." "I am all those things," he acknowledged with a slight smile, "but never with those under my protection, and certainly never with my mate." A comfortable silence fell between them, neither pushing for more than this tentative understanding. As Magnus prepared to leave her to rest, Elena spoke again. "When I was 12, I found references in my books to a rare occurrence among our kind. Soul bonds, different from ordinary mate bonds, deeper, more meaningful, forged through mutual respect rather than mere instinct." Magnus paused at the door, "I've heard the legends. They say such bonds appear in times of great change," Elena continued, "when our kind stands at a crossroads." "Are we at such a crossroads?" Magnus asked quietly. Elena met his gaze steadily. "I've been watching the world from a window for 20 years, Your Majesty. Change is coming, whether we're ready or not." The next morning, as they prepared to depart, an unexpected complication arose. While searching Ravenna's private chambers, Valkyrie discovered a hidden room filled with ancient texts and artifacts. Among them, prominently displayed, was a map marked with locations across all territories and a journal detailing the activities of the Silver Covenant. "It's worse than we thought," Valkyrie reported, showing Magnus the journal. "The Silver Covenant never disbanded after your father's death. They went underground, infiltrating packs across the territories. They've been searching for something called the Bloodfire Key for decades." Magnus glanced at Elena, who stood nearby clutching her father's book. "Elena, does your father's research mention this key?" She nodded slowly. "It speaks of a living key, a wolf of copper fire who can unlock the ancient powers. I always thought it was metaphorical, but what if it's not? Magnus finished. What if the key they've been searching for is you? Elena's face paled. That would explain why Ravenna kept me alive all these years, studying my father's book in secret while keeping me locked away. She wasn't just hiding me from the world, she was hiding me from the Silver Covenant while trying to understand what I am. Magnus made a swift decision. Gather everything from that room. All texts, artifacts, maps. We take it all back to Northern Territory for further study, and double the guard around Elena. If the Silver Covenant learns we've found her, they'll stop at nothing to take her. The departure from Silver Moon territory was tense, with Magnus's elite guard forming a protective formation around Elena. They traveled faster than originally planned, pushing through territory borders with minimal diplomatic formalities. Magnus sent ravens ahead to alert his council of their early return and the discovery of his mate under unexpected circumstances. On the third day of travel, as they made camp in a sheltered valley, Elena approached Magnus, who stood apart from the others, reviewing maps by firelight. "There's something I haven't told you," she said quietly. "Something I discovered in my father's book that I've never told anyone." Magnus set the maps aside, giving her his full attention. "I'm listening." Elena took a deep breath. "The Bloodfire legacy isn't just about power, it's about balance. According to my father's research, in ancient times, wolves lived by different laws. Alpha, Beta, Omega designations existed, but they weren't about dominance and submission. They were about different types of power working in harmony." "What changed?" Magnus asked. "War," Elena replied simply. "Centuries of conflict pushed alphas to the forefront because their strength was needed for survival. The other designations became subordinate. But my father believed the old balance could be restored through the Bloodfire key." "And this key is a person? You?" Elena nodded. "A wolf of copper fire, born when the moon turns blood red. I was born during a lunar eclipse. My father recorded it in his journal, how the moon turned copper the night I was born, matching the color of my wolf when I first shifted as an infant." Magnus considered this information carefully. "If what you're saying is true, you represent a fundamental challenge to the power structure that has governed our kind for centuries. No wonder the Silver Covenant wants to either control or destroy you." "There's more," Elena said, her voice dropping even lower. "The full activation of Bloodfire requires a specific ritual, performed with a true mate under a blood moon. It's said to awaken not just the power of the key, but connect them to the ancestral spirits of all wolves." Magnus's eyes widened. "A living connection to our ancestors? The knowledge, the power that would change everything," Elena finished, "for better or worse." The weight of this revelation settled between them as the fire crackled and night creatures called in the darkness. Magnus finally spoke, his voice resolute. "Whatever power you hold, whatever legacy you carry, know this. You won't face it alone. As your mate, as your alpha, as the man who found you in that tower, I stand with you. Not to control your power, but to help you discover it on your own terms." Elena studied him in the firelight, this powerful alpha who had smashed through a silver door to free her, who now offered not domination, but partnership. Perhaps the soul bond legends were true after all. "The next blood moon is in 4 months," she said finally. Magnus nodded, understanding the significance. "Then we have 4 months to prepare. 4 months to uncover what the Silver Covenant is planning. 4 months for you to decide if you want to embrace this legacy." As they continued their journey the next day, Elena rode beside Magnus rather than in the protected center of the formation. Pack members noted the change, the growing confidence in her posture despite her physical weakness. She was no longer just a rescued prisoner, but a future Luna finding her strength. When they finally crested the last mountain pass and the Northern Territory spread before them, Elena gasped audibly. Unlike the carefully manicured grounds of Silver Moon Estate, the Northern Territory was wild, magnificent, and breathtakingly vast. Mountains thrust toward the sky, forests stretched to the horizon, and nestled within this untamed beauty stood Northwind Fortress, an ancient stronghold built into the mountain itself. "Welcome to your new home," Magnus said quietly, watching her reaction, "if you choose to make it so." Elena looked at the fortress, the territory, and finally at Magnus himself. For 20 years she had been locked away, forgotten, erased. Now she stood on the threshold of a new life, one filled with freedom, power, and possibility. The copper wolf inside her, suppressed for so long, stirred with anticipation. "Home," she repeated softly, testing the unfamiliar word. Then more firmly, "Yes, I think it could be." As they descended toward the fortress, the rising moon cast their shadows long across the snow. The Alpha King and his mate, united by fate and choice, carrying between them an ancient legacy about to reawaken. The Bloodfire Key had been found, and nothing in the world of wolves would ever be the same again. Northwind Fortress loomed before them, ancient stone walls, seemingly growing out of the mountain itself. As they approached the massive iron gates, Elena stared in wonder at the intricate carvings of wolves in battle and hunt that adorned every surface. Guards posted along the battlements howled in celebration at the sight of their alpha returning, the sound echoing across the valley. "They announce our arrival," Magnus explained, noting Elena's startled expression. "An ancient tradition. The pack welcomes its alpha home." For the first time since her rescue, uncertainty flickered across Elena's face. "And what will they make of me?" Magnus guided his horse closer to hers. "They will see what I see. A survivor. A warrior who fought a different kind of battle but emerged victorious nonetheless." The gate swung open to reveal a courtyard bustling with activity. Pack members stopped their tasks to bow respectfully as Magnus passed, their curious gazes lingering on Elena. Her copper braid caught the sunlight, drawing whispers and pointed fingers. After 20 years of solitude, the attention felt like physical pressure against her skin. "Too many," she whispered, her breathing quickening. "Too open." Magnus recognized the signs of panic immediately. "Valkyrie," he commanded. "Clear a path to the east wing, private entrance." The silver-haired warrior moved swiftly, dispersing the gathering crowd with quiet authority. Magnus dismounted and approached Elena's horse, offering his hand. "Look at me," he said gently. "Only at me." Elena focused on his amber eyes, anchoring herself in their steadiness as he helped her dismount. Her legs trembled beneath her, weak from the journey and overwhelmed by the vast space around her. Without asking permission, Magnus swept her into his arms and carried her toward a side entrance, away from prying eyes. "I can walk," she protested weakly. "I know you can," he replied, "but sometimes even the strongest warriors need support." The private quarters Magnus brought her to were nothing like her tower prison. Spacious rooms with high ceilings opened onto a private courtyard garden. Floor-to-ceiling windows invited natural light, and a massive fireplace promised warmth against the mountain chill. Despite the grandeur, the space felt surprisingly welcoming, with comfortable furnishings and bookshelves filled with volumes both ancient and new. "These are the Luna's quarters," Magnus explained, setting her gently on a cushioned bench. "Unused since my mother passed. I thought you might appreciate the privacy, the garden access, and most importantly, the proximity to the library through that connecting door." Elena's gaze followed where he pointed, her eyes widening at the glimpse of endless bookshelves beyond. The thoughtfulness of this gesture, understanding what would matter most to her, touched something deep within. "Thank you," she said simply. "Rest now," Magnus instructed. "The pack healer will attend you shortly. Anything you need, you have only to ask." As he turned to leave, Elena called after him. "Magnus!" He paused, looking back. "The pack will have questions about me, about us. What will you tell them?" "The truth," he replied without hesitation. "That I found my mate held captive by Silver Moon, that you are under my protection while you recover, and that any who wish to earn your trust must first earn mine." After he departed, Elena explored her new surroundings with cautious steps. Each room seemed impossibly large after the confines of her tower. The bathing chamber alone was twice the size of her former prison, with a sunken tub that could accommodate several people. Fresh clothing had been laid out, simple but finely made garments that would actually fit her thin frame. A knock at the door announced the arrival of the pack healer, a matronly woman with silver-streaked hair pulled back in a practical braid. "Luna Elena," she greeted with a respectful nod. "I am Ingrid, healer and caretaker of Northwind Fortress." "Just Elena, please," Elena corrected gently. "I have not accepted the title of Luna." Ingrid's eyes reflected understanding beyond her words. "As you wish. May I examine you?" Alpha Magnus expressed concern about your physical condition. The examination was thorough but respectful. Ingrid's hands were gentle as she assessed Elena's condition, her expression remaining neutral despite what must have been alarming findings. 20 years without proper nutrition or sunlight has taken its toll, Ingrid finally stated, mixing herbs in a small bowl. Your muscles have atrophied from confinement. Vitamin deficiencies have weakened your bones. Your wolf has been suppressed so long that reconnecting will require careful work. She handed Elena the herbal mixture. This will help with the physical symptoms, but healing will take time and patience. "And my wolf?" Elena asked quietly. "Can she be restored after so long?" Ingrid's expression softened. "The wolf spirit is resilient. With proper care and gradual reintroduction, yes. But you must understand, shifting after such prolonged suppression will be painful, possibly dangerous. We must proceed with great caution." That night, alone in her new chambers, the full impact of freedom crashed over Elena. The bed was too soft, the room too large, the silence too complete. Without the familiar constraints of her tower, without the routine that had structured 20 years of captivity, she felt adrift, untethered. She tried to sleep but found herself pacing the perimeter of the room, measuring steps as she had in her tower, 120 paces around compared to the 30 she had known for 2 decades. When exhaustion finally claimed her, she curled not on the luxurious bed but beneath it, in the smaller, more confined space that felt paradoxically safer. Dreams came swiftly, dark and disorienting. Ravenna's cold laugh, tower walls closing in, a silver door that burned. Elena woke gasping for breath, disoriented by unfamiliar surroundings, until reality slowly reasserted itself. Freedom, safety, Northwind Fortress. The first week passed in a haze of adjustment. Elena struggled with the simplest aspects of freedom. Food was both wonderful and overwhelming, her stomach unable to handle rich meals after decades of basic sustenance. Sunlight, even filtered through curtains, burned her sensitive skin and eyes. Worst of all was the constant presence of others, pack members whose curious glances and whispered conversations set her nerves on edge. Magnus visited daily, but never stayed long, seeming to understand her need for space even as the mate bond pulled them toward each other. He brought books from his private collection, maps of territories she had only read about, and updates on Ravenna's imprisonment awaiting formal trial. On the 8th day, Elena ventured into the fortress library for the first time. The vast circular room housed more books than she had ever imagined existing, shelves stretching toward the ceiling, with rolling ladders providing access. Windows high in the stone walls allowed natural light to pour across reading tables and comfortable chairs. "Magnificent, is it not?" A voice spoke from behind a towering stack of ancient texts. Elena started, still unaccustomed to unexpected encounters. An elderly man emerged from behind the books, his white beard reaching his chest and wire spectacles perched on his nose. Despite his advanced age, his amber eyes remained sharp and assessing. "I am Alaric," he introduced himself with a slight bow. "Scholar, historian, and Magnus tells me, your newest research partner." "Research partner?" Elena echoed. Alaric gestured to the open tome on his desk. "The Bloodfire Legacy. Magnus has commissioned me to assist you in deciphering your father's work and connecting it to our own historical records. If you're willing, of course." For the first time since her rescue, genuine excitement sparked within Elena. "I would like that very much." The library became Elena's sanctuary over the following weeks. With Alaric's guidance, she began cross-referencing her father's notes with the fortress's ancient texts. The work gave purpose to her days, structure to her recovery, and gradually, a place within the pack. Physical rehabilitation proved more challenging. Under Ingrid's supervision, Elena began simple exercises to rebuild wasted muscles. Each movement was agony at first, her body rebelling against demands it had forgotten how to meet. Yet she persisted, driven by determination that had sustained her through 20 years of imprisonment. "Your body remembers," Ingrid assured her during a particularly difficult session. "Just as your mind retained knowledge through reading, your muscles retain memory of movement. We simply need to remind them." Elena's first venture beyond her quarters and the library came a month after her arrival. Magnus suggested a short walk in the private garden, away from the main pack areas. Elena agreed with trepidation, conscious of her still frail appearance and awkward gait. "The pack is curious about you," Magnus admitted as they slowly circled a bubbling fountain. "Stories have spread about the copper-haired mate I rescued from Silver Moon. Some call it a romantic tale, others whisper of prophecies and ancient powers." "And what do you tell them?" Elena asked, carefully navigating stone steps with a hand on his arm for support. "That the truth is both simpler and more complex than rumors suggest." Magnus watched her determined efforts with unveiled admiration. "That their future Luna is focusing on recovery before taking her place at my side." Elena stiffened. "I haven't agreed to become Luna." "No," Magnus acknowledged. "You haven't. The choice remains yours, as promised." They completed the garden circuit in contemplative silence. As they approached the entrance to her quarters, Elena noticed a tall female warrior standing sentinel nearby, her posture alert but non-threatening. "Who is she?" Elena inquired. "She watches me often." "Valkyrie," Magnus replied, "commander of my elite guard and one of my most trusted advisors. She's appointed herself your unofficial protector." "I didn't realize I needed protecting here," Elena observed. Magnus's expression darkened momentarily. "Silver Moon's betrayal has raised concerns about other potential threats. Until we understand fully what the Silver Covenant wants with you, precautions are necessary." As her strength gradually returned, Elena began meeting other key pack members. Gunnar, Magnus's massive head of security, initially intimidated her with his scarred face and taciturn manner. During a security briefing in Magnus's study, Elena discovered the gentle heart beneath the warrior exterior. "The northern perimeter requires additional patrols," Gunnar was reporting when he noticed Elena struggling to reach a high shelf. Without comment, he paused his report to retrieve the book she sought, then resumed speaking as if nothing had happened. Later, when Elena thanked him, he shrugged massive shoulders. "My sister was small too, before the war took her." "The Three Territories War?" Elena asked. Gunnar nodded, unexpected emotion crossing his weathered features. "Silver Covenant soldiers raided our village, said they were searching for threats to pack stability. My parents resisted. My sister hid me in the root cellar. By the time Magnus's father arrived with reinforcements, everyone was gone." He met her gaze directly. "When Magnus told us about finding you, about what they did to you, I remembered my sister. She would have been about your age now." The simple words formed a connection between them, an understanding beyond words. From that day forward, Gunnar's protective presence became a constant, comforting rather than intrusive. Elena's integration into pack life accelerated when she began attending council meetings at Magnus's invitation. The council members initially viewed her with skepticism, seeing only a frail woman with little practical experience of pack politics. Their perspective changed dramatically during discussions about a territorial dispute with an eastern pack. "Their claim extends to the Crescent River," Councillor Thaddeus argued, pointing to the map spread across the table. "Historical precedent supports their position." "Actually," Elena interjected quietly, The original boundary treaty of 1738 specifically places the Crescent Valley under Northern protection. The Eastern Pact's claim came later, during the Divided Moon period, and was never formally ratified. Silence fell as Elena approached the map, her movements still careful but increasingly confident. If you examine the original treaty text, which I believe is preserved in your archives, you'll find the boundary markers clearly established along the eastern ridge, not the river as they claim. Alaric confirmed her assertion after consulting the archives, and the council's respect for Elena grew substantially. Her encyclopedic knowledge of Pack history and law, gained through years of isolated study, proved invaluable in numerous subsequent negotiations. As Elena found her place within the Pack structure, Magnus watched with pride and growing affection. Their connection deepened through shared work and quiet evenings in his private study, where they discussed everything from Pack politics to personal philosophies. Despite the intense mate bond drawing them together, Magnus maintained respectful distance, allowing Elena to set the pace of their relationship. 3 months after her rescue, Elena faced her greatest challenge yet. Under Ingrid's guidance, she had been performing exercises to reconnect with her wolf spirit, meditation techniques designed to strengthen the bond between human and animal sides. The time had come for her first shift attempt. "Are you certain you're ready?" Magnus asked as they walked toward a private clearing in the fortress woods, accompanied only by Ingrid and Valkyrie for safety. Elena nodded, determination outweighing fear. "My wolf has been caged too long. She deserves freedom as much as I do." The clearing stood bathed in afternoon sunlight, a peaceful space surrounded by ancient pines. Elena removed her outer clothing, standing vulnerable in a simple shift as Ingrid reviewed final instructions. "Remember, the connection may feel foreign after so long. Don't force the shift. Allow it to flow naturally. Your wolf remembers even if your body has forgotten." Elena closed her eyes, focusing inward as she had practiced for weeks. She sought the copper wolf that had been part of her since birth, suppressed but never extinguished during her imprisonment. At first, nothing happened. The connection remained elusive, frustratingly distant. "She's afraid," Elena realized aloud, eyes opening in distress. "And my wolf fears shifting after being contained so long." Magnus approached slowly, stopping a respectful distance away. "May I help?" At Elena's nod, he knelt before her, taking her hands in his. "When I was young, after my father died, I couldn't shift for months. The grief, the responsibility, it blocked my connection. My mother taught me to focus not on the shift itself, but on the freedom it represented." He squeezed her hands gently. "Close your eyes again. Don't think about changing forms. Think about running through the forest, about feeling the earth beneath your paws, about the sense of pine and snow and freedom." Elena followed his guidance, visualizing forest paths and mountain streams. She imagined her copper wolf running unrestrained for the first time in decades, powerful and free, warmth spread through her limbs, familiar yet forgotten, the ancient magic of transformation awakening cells that had remained dormant for 20 years. The shift, when it finally began, brought excruciating pain. Bones remolded, muscles stretched, organs rearranged. Elena bit back a scream as her body fought against changes it had forgotten how to accommodate. Through the agony, she felt Magnus's steady presence, his strength flowing through their bond, supporting but not interfering. Then suddenly, gloriously, the transformation completed. Elena stood on 4 paws, her senses overwhelming her with information. Scents she had never detected in human form flooded her awareness. Sounds from miles away reached sensitive ears, and colors previously invisible to human eyes painted the forest in magnificent new patterns. Absolute silence fell over the clearing. Her wolf was magnificent, copper and gold, like fire captured in fur, larger than any female wolf should be, with eyes that glowed amber with ancient power. "Moon goddess," Valkyrie breathed. "She's a bloodfire wolf. The legends are true." And Magnus shifted too, his massive wolf appearing, midnight black with deep red highlights that caught the sunlight. He approached Elena's copper wolf, nuzzling her gently, then threw his head back and howled, a sound of pure joy and triumph. Elena joined the howl, a sound of freedom and power that echoed through the forest. Then she ran, truly ran, for the first time in 20 years. Magnus kept pace beside her, while Valkyrie followed at a respectful distance, guarding but not interfering in this sacred moment. They ran until Elena's untried muscles burned with exertion, until the joy of movement overcame the memory of confinement. When exhaustion finally overtook her, Elena collapsed in a sun-dappled clearing, shifting back to human form with surprising ease. Magnus shifted as well, quickly wrapping her in the cloak Valkyrie provided. "How do you feel?" "Alive," Elena whispered, tears streaming down her face. For the first time in 20 years, truly alive. The successful shift marked a turning point in Elena's recovery. Her confidence grew alongside her physical strength. She began joining Magnus for brief appearances at pack gatherings, standing tall despite whispers about her unusual copper wolf and the circumstances of her discovery. One evening, a month after her first shift, Elena sat with Magnus in his private study reviewing reports from border patrols. Their comfortable routine was interrupted when Alaric burst through the door, his usual composure shattered. "You must see this," the elderly scholar exclaimed, spreading ancient parchments across Magnus's desk. "I've been cross-referencing Elena's father's notes with our oldest chronicles. The similarities are undeniable." The parchments contained drawings of a copper wolf surrounded by flames, with smaller wolves bowing in reverence. Ancient text in a nearly forgotten language bordered the images. "The prophecy of fire and blood," Alaric translated, finger tracing the symbols. "When the wolf of copper flame returns after great suffering, the old ways shall be remembered and power shall find its rightful balance." Magnus studied the images with growing concern. "How old are these chronicles?" "Nearly 1,000 years, Alaric replied, "predating even the Three Territories' War, and there's more." He produced another document, this one bearing the Silver Covenant seal. This was among the papers seized from Ravenna's hidden room. It contains a directive to find and either control or eliminate any wolf showing signs of copper coloring. Elena's hands trembled as she examined the document. "They've been hunting wolves like me for generations. Why? What threat do we pose?" "Not threat," Alaric corrected. "Change." According to these texts, Bloodfire wolves once served as mediators between alpha power and omega wisdom. They balanced the pack hierarchy, preventing any one designation from dominating. When alphas consolidated power through warfare, Bloodfire wolves were systematically eliminated to maintain the new order. "And the Silver Covenant?" Magnus pressed. "What is their interest?" Alaric's expression grew grim. Based on these documents, they formed centuries ago to maintain alpha dominance. They believed the return of Bloodfire wolves would undermine the entire power structure our society is built upon, and they're not entirely wrong. Elena looked between the two men, understanding dawning. The Bloodfire legacy isn't just about power, it's about transformation, about restoring balance between designations. A balance that would diminish alpha authority, Magnus concluded quietly, including mine. An uncomfortable silence fell between them. The implications were staggering. If the prophecies were true, Elena represented a fundamental challenge to the very hierarchy that gave Magnus his position as Alpha King. Before they could discuss further, howls of alarm echoed from the fortress walls. Magnus rose instantly, recognizing the warning call of invasion. Gunnar burst into the study moments later, his expression grave. "Silver Covenant forces approach from the east, at least 50 warriors, heavily armed." "How did they find us so quickly?" Elena gasped. "Ravenna must have sent word before her arrest," Magnus growled. "Valkyrie, secure Elena in the underground chambers. Gunnar, assemble the elite guard. Alaric, hide these documents in the sealed archives." As the others rushed to follow orders, Magnus turned to Elena. "Stay hidden. Stay safe." "I should be with you," she protested. "This attack is because of me." Which is why you must be protected, Magnus insisted. I can't fight effectively if I'm worried about your safety. Valkyrie led Elena through hidden passages beneath the fortress, secret routes designed for the Alpha family's escape during sieges. The underground chambers were well provisioned but claustrophobic, too reminiscent of Elena's tower prison. I can't stay here, she told Valkyrie, after only minutes of listening to the distant sounds of battle above. Not while others fight my battle. My orders are to keep you safe, Valkyrie replied firmly. And you can protect me above ground, Elena countered. But I won't hide in another prison, even one with good intentions. Something in her determined expression must have resonated with the warrior woman. Valkyrie studied her thoughtfully, then nodded once. Stay behind me. Do exactly as I say, and if I tell you to run, you run without question. They emerged from a hidden entrance near the main courtyard, staying to the shadows as they observed the battle. Silver Covenant forces had breached the outer wall, their silver weapons gleaming in the moonlight as they engaged Magnus's warriors. The fighting was fierce, with casualties mounting on both sides. Elena spotted Magnus in the center of the conflict, his massive form shifting between wolf and human as the situation demanded. Even outnumbered, he fought with legendary skill, his movements fluid and deadly. Yet even from a distance, Elena could see he was tiring, blood darkening his left side where a silver blade had found its mark. He's wounded, she whispered. Magnus has survived worse, Valkyrie assured her, though concern shadowed her eyes. We should return below. This position is too exposed. But Elena's attention had shifted to a figure approaching Magnus from behind, a Silver Covenant assassin moving undetected through the chaos. Without conscious thought, Elena broke from Valkyrie's protection, running toward Magnus with a warning cry that was lost in the battle noise. Time seemed to slow as Elena raced across the courtyard. She saw the assassin raise a silver dagger, saw Magnus engaged with two opponents, unaware of the threat at his back, saw the dagger begin its downward arc toward his unprotected spine. Something broke open inside Elena, a dam releasing 2 decades of suppressed power. The shift happened instantaneously, painlessly, her copper wolf exploding into being with unprecedented speed. But this time, something new emerged with the transformation. Fire. Pure copper flame erupted from her fur, encasing her wolf form in a swirling inferno that burned nothing but illuminated the entire courtyard with supernatural light. The bloodfire, awakened by desperate need to protect her mate, manifested in its full glory. Elena's burning wolf form leapt across the remaining distance, intercepting the assassin's strike. Silver blade met copper flame and disintegrated on contact, the ancient metal no match for the bloodfire's power. The assassin recoiled in terror, dropping to his knees before the fiery apparition. The battle paused as all combatants turned toward the unprecedented sight. Elena's wolf stood protectively before Magnus, copper flames dancing across her fur without consuming it, eyes glowing with the accumulated power of generations of bloodfire wolves. The prophecy, someone whispered, the words spreading through friend and foe alike. The copper flame returns. The Silver Covenant commander shouted orders, redirecting his forces toward this new threat. As they advanced, Elena's bloodfire responded instinctively. The flames expanded outward, forming a protective barrier around Magnus and his closest warriors. Then something even more extraordinary occurred. Within the flames, translucent wolf forms began to appear. Spirit wolves, the ancestors of the northern packs, summoned by the bloodfire's connection to the other side. They moved through the barrier, attacking Silver Covenant forces with ghostly fangs and claws that somehow inflicted very real damage. Faced with supernatural forces beyond their understanding, the Silver Covenant troops retreated in disarray, fleeing back through the breach they had created. Within minutes, the courtyard stood empty of enemies, leaving stunned northern warriors surrounded by slowly fading spirit wolves. Elena's copper wolf approached Magnus, the flames subsiding as immediate danger passed. He shifted to human form, kneeling before her with an expression of awe and humility that seemed foreign on the Alpha King's proud features. The legends were true, he said softly. Bloodfire, the balance of power made manifest. As the last spirit wolf faded back to the ancestral plane, Elena shifted to human form, collapsing from the enormous energy expenditure. Magnus caught her before she hit the ground, cradling her against his chest as healers rushed forward. "What happened?" she asked weakly. "What did I do?" "You saved us all," Magnus answered simply. "And you changed everything." News of the Bloodfire Wolf spread like wildfire through wolf territories. Witnesses described a copper wolf wreathed in magical flame, commanding the spirits of ancestors, turning back a Silver Covenant attack single-handedly. Some called it miracle, others heresy. All recognized it as the fulfillment of ancient prophecy. For 3 days after the battle, Elena remained unconscious, her body recovering from the massive energy drain of manifesting Bloodfire for the first time. Magnus refused to leave her side, conducting council business from a chair beside her bed, sleeping only in brief snatches. On the dawn of the 4th day, Elena finally stirred, opening amber eyes that now contained flecks of copper fire that hadn't been there before. "Welcome back," Magnus said softly, taking her hand. "You had me worried." "The attack," Elena murmured, memories returning slowly. "The Silver Covenant. Did we lose anyone?" 6 wounded, none fatally, Magnus reported. "Thanks to you." Elena struggled to sit up, accepting Magnus's assistance. "The fire. I never knew such power existed within me." "Few did," came Alaric's voice from the doorway. The old scholar entered carrying an ancient tome bound in red leather. "The full Bloodfire legacy has not manifested in over 500 years. The Silver Covenant's purge was more thorough than we realized." Elena accepted a cup of water from Magnus, her hands still trembling with weakness. "What exactly did I do? There were wolves in the flames, spirit wolves." "According to the oldest texts," Alaric explained, Bloodfire wolves served as bridges between the living and the spirit world. They could summon ancestral guidance and protection in times of great need, a power that balanced alpha strength with connection to pack history and wisdom. "A power that threatens everything the Silver Covenant stands for," Magnus added grimly. "They'll come again, with greater numbers and better preparation." "They already gather," Gunnar confirmed, joining them with Valkyrie at his side. "Our scouts report increased activity at multiple Silver Covenant strongholds. They're calling for allies from all territories, claiming the Bloodfire Wolf threatens the natural order." "And how do our allies respond?" Magnus asked. "With divided loyalty," Valkyrie answered. "Some fear the change Elena represents. Others see hope for a new way forward, but all are coming to witness for themselves." "Witness what?" Elena questioned. "You," Magnus replied simply. "The prophecy fulfilled. The copper flame returned after great suffering to restore balance." Elena looked between them, overwhelmed by the weight of expectation in their eyes. "I'm not a prophecy. I'm just a woman who survived imprisonment, who happens to have an unusual wolf." "Oh, you're far more than that," Magnus disagreed gently. "You revealed power beyond anything seen in centuries. You summoned ancestors to fight alongside the living, and in doing so, you've sparked hope among those who chafe under alpha-dominated hierarchy." "The Omegas," Valkyrie elaborated. "Word spreads among them especially. They speak your name like a prayer, Elena. The Bloodfire Wolf who will restore their voice, their power, their place in pack society." Horror dawned as Elena realized the full implications. "I've started a revolution without intending to." "Revolutions begin with a single act of courage," Alaric noted. "Your very survival was the first act. Manifesting Bloodfire in defense of your alpha mate was the second. What comes next is your choice." "What choice?" Elena demanded. "I never asked for this power or responsibility." "Few who change history ever do," Magnus said quietly. "But the choice remains. Embrace the Bloodfire legacy and all it represents, or reject it and allow the old order to continue." Elena met his gaze directly. "And where do you stand in this, Alpha King? If I embrace this legacy, it diminishes the very power structure that makes you who you are." The question hung between them, unavoidable and profound. Magnus considered his answer carefully, aware that Gunnar, Valkyrie, and Alaric watched this exchange with bated breath. "I stand with you," he said finally, "not because of the mate bond, though that pulls me to your side, not because of the Bloodfire's power, though I witnessed its magnificence, but because in 3 months of knowing you, I've seen a wisdom and compassion that our world desperately needs." He took her hand, his touch conveying sincerity beyond words. "My father once told me that true leadership isn't about maintaining power, but about recognizing when power needs to evolve. Perhaps this is such a time." Before Elena could respond, distant howls signaled approaching wolves. Valkyrie moved to the window, her expression betraying surprise. "Alpha delegations from all territories approach our borders," she reported. "At least 12 distinct packs, including Silver Moon. They request formal audience." "So soon?" Elena whispered, fear flickering across her features. "Word travels quickly when prophecies awaken," Alaric observed. "They come seeking answers, direction, perhaps alliance." Magnus rose to his full height, the Alpha King in every line of his powerful frame. "Then we shall provide it. Prepare the Great Hall. Inform the Council. We receive them in 1 hour." As the others departed to make preparations, Magnus remained with Elena. "You don't have to face them," he assured her. "You're still recovering." "If I don't face them now, I face an even greater reckoning later," Elena replied, strength returning to her voice. "Help me prepare. If I'm to be their Bloodfire wolf, I should at least look the part." With Ingrid's assistance, Elena dressed in a gown of deep copper silk that matched her hair and wolf coloring. Her copper braid, still reaching past her waist, was interwoven with thin gold chains that caught the light with each movement. Though still physically weak, she carried herself with dignity born from decades of surviving the unsurvivable. The Great Hall of Northwind Fortress had been arranged for formal council. A raised dais held 2 ornate chairs, with council members seated along both sides of the massive stone chamber. Representatives from 12 territories filled the remaining space, each delegation marked by their pack colors and symbols. Whispers rippled through the assembly as Magnus entered with Elena at his side. He wore formal Alpha regalia, black leather armor with silver wolf emblems, a ceremonial sword at his hip. They presented a striking pair, the powerful Alpha King and the slender copper-haired woman whose very existence challenged everything the wolf world held sacred. "Esteemed Alphas and representatives," Magnus addressed the gathering, his voice carrying effortlessly across the silent hall. "You come seeking confirmation of rumors. Let me provide it directly. The Bloodfire Wolf of Prophecy has returned. Elena, formerly imprisoned by Silver Moon, carries this ancient legacy." Murmurs spread through the crowd, some awed, others skeptical or fearful. From the Silver Moon delegation, a young female who bore striking resemblance to Ravenna stood. "My mother committed grievous crimes," she stated clearly. "On behalf of Silver Moon Pack, I offer formal apology and reparation to Elena for 20 years of unjust imprisonment." "Apology accepted," Elena responded, her voice steady despite her nerves. "Silver Moon Pack was as much victim as I, manipulated by forces beyond your control." "What forces?" challenged an older Alpha from the Eastern Territories. "Speak plainly of these accusations." Alaric stepped forward, presenting evidence gathered from Ravenna's chambers and the fortress archives. "The Silver Covenant has operated in shadow for centuries, systematically eliminating Bloodfire wolves and others who might challenge Alpha dominance. Their influence extends through all territories, corrupting pack structures to maintain power imbalance." "Preposterous," scoffed another Alpha. "These are children's tales and ancient superstitions." "Are they?" Elena questioned softly, rising from her seat. "I lived those children's tales. I manifested those ancient superstitions when the Silver Covenant attacked your Alpha King 3 nights ago." With deliberate calm, she extended one hand, palm upward. At first, nothing happened. Then slowly, a small flame appeared, dancing above her palm without burning her flesh. The copper fire cast her face in otherworldly light, reflecting in her amber eyes now flecked with matching fire. "This is Bloodfire," she stated, as the assembly stared in stunned silence. The the power your ancestors sought to eliminate because it threatened their absolute authority. The connection to spirit wolves who remember when alphas, betas, and omegas governed in balance rather than hierarchy. She closed her hand, extinguishing the flame. I did not seek this power or the responsibility it brings, but I will not reject it, nor will I allow the Silver Covenant to continue their campaign of suppression and fear. "And you, Alpha King Magnus?" called a voice from the back. "Do you support this challenge to your authority?" All eyes turned to Magnus, the most powerful Alpha in 3 generations, whose response would determine whether Elena's revelations sparked war or transformation. Magnus stood slowly, his gaze sweeping the assembly before settling on Elena with unmistakable pride. "I support truth wherever it leads us. I support balance, even at cost to traditional power. And I support my mate, the Bloodfire Wolf, who will stand as my equal, not my subordinate." He extended his hand to Elena, who took it without hesitation. "The time of absolute alpha rule must end," Magnus continued, "not because alphas lack value, but because all designations have wisdom to contribute. The Bloodfire legacy reminds us of what we have forgotten over centuries of warfare and power consolidation." Elena felt strength flowing through their joined hands, Magnus supporting her physically and emotionally before the assembled packs. "The Silver Covenant will strike again," she warned the gathering. "They fear the change I represent. They will call it unnatural, dangerous, heretical. But look into your own pack histories, your oldest records. You will find reference to the time before, when Bloodfire wolves helped maintain harmony between designations." "And if we find such records?" asked a younger Alpha, his expression thoughtful rather than hostile. "What then?" "Then you choose," Magnus replied. "Stand with the old ways of dominance and suppression, or help build something new, a return to balance that honors all wolves regardless of designation." "The blood moon approaches," Alaric noted, addressing the assembly. "In 1 month's time, the ancient alignment that awakens the fullness of Bloodfire power will occur. By pack law, all disputes must be resolved before this sacred time." "Then we have 1 month," Elena concluded. 1 month to prepare for the Silver Covenant's next attack. 1 month to decide whether to embrace change or cling to the familiar. 1 month to determine the future of all wolfkind. As the assembly dispersed, debate erupting among the delegations, Elena leaned against Magnus, physical and emotional exhaustion taking toll. "Did I do the right thing?" she whispered. "Challenging centuries of tradition? Potentially starting a war?" Magnus led her from the dais toward a private antechamber, supporting her subtly as they walked. Once alone, he gathered her gently into his arms. "You did the only thing your heart would allow," he answered. "Speak truth in the face of lies. Offer hope in place of fear. This is why the moon goddess brought us together, Elena, not just as mates, but as partners in transformation." Elena rested against his solid strength, drawing comfort from his unwavering support despite the personal cost to his own power and position. "The blood moon approaches," she murmured. "According to my father's book, it will either fully awaken Bloodfire power or destroy the vessel attempting to channel it." Magnus tightened his embrace. "Then we have 1 month to ensure you're strong enough to survive it. 1 month to gather allies against the Silver Covenant. 1 month to prepare for the battle that will determine not just our future, but the future of all wolves." 1 month, Elena echoed, thinking of all she had endured and overcome in 20 years of captivity. Compared to that, 1 month to change the world seemed almost reasonable. "Together, we face whatever comes." "Together," Magnus agreed, sealing the promise with a kiss that carried all the power and potential of their unexpected bond. Alpha and Bloodfire, tradition and transformation, strength and wisdom united in perfect prophesied balance. The days following the Territorial Council unfolded in a whirlwind of preparation and discovery. As word spread about the Bloodfire Wolf's return, Northwind Fortress transformed from a military stronghold into the epicenter of a growing movement. Each morning brought new arrivals. curious omegas seeking confirmation of rumors, scholarly betas carrying ancient texts, even dissatisfied alphas questioning centuries of tradition. Magnus converted the eastern courtyard into a training ground where his elite warriors prepared for the Silver Covenant's inevitable assault. The rhythmic clash of weapons and coordinated movements of wolf formations continued from dawn until dusk. Valkyrie led these sessions with ruthless efficiency, her silver-streaked hair gleaming in the sunlight as she demonstrated combat techniques against silver weapons. "Higher guard!" she barked at a young warrior. "Silver blades aim for the heart. Protect your center or die where you stand." Elena observed these preparations from the fortress battlements, her copper braid catching the mountain breeze. Though her physical strength continued to improve, controlling the bloodfire remained frustratingly elusive. Since that first explosive manifestation during the attack, she had managed only small flames that flickered briefly before extinguishing. "You're trying too hard," Magnus commented, joining her at the stone parapet. His presence brought immediate comfort, the mate bond between them strengthening with each passing day. "How does one not try hard to control ancient magic that could determine the fate of our entire society?" Elena countered, frustration evident in her tone. Magnus smiled, the expression softening his warrior features. "The same way one survives 20 years of imprisonment without losing hope or sanity, with patience, adaptability, and trust in your own strength." Elena leaned into his solid presence, drawing comfort from his unwavering faith. "The blood moon approaches. According to my father's notes, I must master bloodfire before then, or risk destruction when attempting the ritual." "Then we find someone to teach you," Magnus stated with characteristic decisiveness. "Someone who understands bloodfire from experience, not just ancient texts." "Such individuals don't exist," Elena reminded him. "The Silver Covenant has hunted bloodfire wolves to extinction." "Perhaps not complete extinction," Alaric interrupted, approaching with an ancient map clutched in weathered hands. "I've been cross-referencing accounts of copper wolf sightings with known Silver Covenant purges. There's a pattern I overlooked until now." The elderly scholar spread the map across a nearby table, revealing territories marked with various symbols. Silver Covenant activity clusters around these regions, but systematically avoids this area. He indicated a remote mountain range beyond the Northwestern Territories. Local legends speak of a flame witch dwelling in these peaks for generations. Travelers report seeing a wolf with unusual coloring, though accounts are dismissed as superstition. Hope flickered in Elena's chest. "You believe another bloodfire wolf survives?" "Not just any bloodfire wolf," Alaric elaborated. "The pattern of sightings spans nearly 80 years. If true, this individual has mastered bloodfire to an extent that allows extraordinary longevity." Magnus studied the map with tactical precision. "The journey would be dangerous. These mountains lie beyond Allied territories, through regions controlled by rogue packs hostile to the Northern Alliance." "I must go," Elena stated without hesitation. "If another bloodfire wolf exists, their knowledge could be crucial not just for my survival, but for understanding the legacy I carry." Magnus recognized the determination in her amber eyes, the same unwavering resolve that had sustained her through decades of captivity. "We leave at dawn," he decided. "Small party, elite guards only. Speed and stealth over force." The expedition departed as morning mist still clung to the fortress walls. Magnus led a group of 6, himself, Elena, Valkyrie, Gunnar, and 2 elite trackers. They traveled in wolf form when terrain permitted, covering ground with supernatural speed. Elena's copper wolf, though smaller than Magnus's massive black form, matched his pace with growing confidence. 3 days of hard travel brought them to the border of unaligned territories. Here they shifted to human form, donning nondescript clothing that would attract less attention than the distinctive garb of the Northern Alliance. "We cross into Blackthorn territory by nightfall," Gunnar warned as they prepared to continue. "They're not officially hostile, but they mistrust all formal pack structures. Keep weapons concealed but accessible." Elena observed the changing landscape with wonder. Having seen the world only through books and a tower window for 20 years, each new vista held extraordinary beauty. Alpine meadows gave way to denser forests, streams cascaded down rocky slopes, and wildlife flourished in the untamed wilderness. Their first encounter with Blackthorn scouts came at dusk of the fourth day. 3 wolves emerged from the forest shadows, their fur dark and their expression suspicious. "State your business, travelers," the lead scout demanded after shifting to human form, his hand resting on a concealed blade. Magnus stepped forward, deliberately moderating his dominating presence. "We seek passage through Blackthorn territory. Our destination lies beyond your northern border." "The Witch of Frost Peak," another scout surmised, eyes narrowing. "None who seek her return." "We'll take our chances," Magnus replied evenly. The scouts conferred briefly before the leader addressed them again. "Our Alpha will decide. You'll be escorted to Blackthorn Hall, weapons surrendered until departure." With little choice but to comply, the group followed their escorts deeper into Blackthorn territory. Unlike the organized structure of Northern Alliance settlements, Blackthorn dwellings blended almost seamlessly with the forest, homes nestled within massive trees or tucked against hillsides, nearly invisible until one stood directly before them. Blackthorn Hall proved similarly unobtrusive. A sprawling structure built partially into a mountainside, its walls covered with living vines bearing wicked thorns. Guards positioned along the approach watched with unconcealed wariness as the group was led inside. The Blackthorn Alpha awaited in a circular chamber illuminated by skylights. Unlike most alphas who emphasized their status through formal attire and imposing presence, this leader wore simple leather garments adorned with forest tokens. Only her eyes betrayed her power, piercing green that assessed the visitors with ancient intelligence. "Northern Alliance wolves walk boldly into Blackthorn territory," she observed, her voice surprisingly melodic, "including the Alpha King himself. Curious." Magnus inclined his head with respect. "Alpha Serena. We seek passage, nothing more." "Nothing is ever so simple with pack wolves," Serena countered. Her attention shifted to Elena, gaze lingering on her copper braid. "Especially when they travel with myth-made flesh. The blood fire returns after centuries." Elena stepped forward. "You recognize what I am." "Blackthorn remembers what formal packs choose to forget," Serena replied. "We've safeguarded many truths erased from your histories." She circled Elena slowly, assessing. "The flames have awakened but remain untamed. You seek the Elder." "Yes," Elena confirmed. "Can you help us reach her?" Serena considered the request, tension filling the chamber as her pack members awaited her decision. "The Elder accepts visitors of her choosing, not ours. I can provide safe passage through our territory and guidance to the boundary of her domain. Beyond that, your fate rests in her hands." "We accept your terms," Magnus agreed. Serena nodded once. "Rest tonight. My son will guide you at first light." As the group was led to guest quarters, she called after them. "A warning, Bloodfire Wolf. The Elder tests those who seek her wisdom. Few are deemed worthy." Dawn brought low clouds and gentle rainfall as they resumed their journey, now accompanied by Serena's son, Kale. The young wolf moved through the forest with extraordinary grace, finding paths invisible to untrained eyes. "How much farther to the Elder's territory?" Elena asked as they paused near a mountain stream. "We reach the boundary by nightfall," Kale answered, filling water skins from the clear current. "Beyond lies Frost Peak and the Elder's domain. None from Blackthorn enter without invitation." "What do you know of her?" Valkyrie inquired. "This Elder we seek." Kale's expression grew solemn. "Stories say she came to these mountains before my grandmother's birth, already ancient then. Some believe she fled the great purges that followed the Three Territories' War. Others claim she's been here since the time before packs formed." "And the blood fire?" Elena pressed. "Have you witnessed it?" "Once," Kale admitted, "when rogues threatened our southern borders 3 winters past. A copper wolf appeared on the ridge above our battle. Flames engulfed her without burning, and spirit wolves fought alongside our warriors until the threat retreated." He studied Elena with newfound respect. "Until now, I thought it merely legend." They reached the boundary marker as sunset painted the western sky in shades of amber and gold. A ring of white stones formed a perfect circle in a small clearing, ancient symbols carved into each weathered surface. "This is where we part ways," Kael announced. "Follow the northern path until it ends. The Elder will find you if she wishes." "You're not coming with us?" Elena questioned. Kael shook his head. "None may cross this boundary without the Elder's explicit invitation. Even accompanying you this far tests the limits of her tolerance." As their blackthorn guide departed, Elena approached the stone circle with trepidation. The symbols carved into each rock seemed to shimmer in the fading light, almost alive beneath her gaze. "These markings," she murmured, tracing one with her fingertip. "They match descriptions in my father's book. Boundary wards created by bloodfire wolves of the ancient times." Magnus studied the circle with tactical consideration. "Do we cross now or make camp and proceed at first light?" Before Elena could respond, a haunting howl echoed from the mountains ahead. The sound carried unusual harmonics, vibrating through bone and blood rather than merely reaching their ears. Elena's copper wolf stirred beneath her skin, responding to the call with instinctive recognition. "We're being summoned," she stated, stepping into the stone circle without hesitation. The moment Elena crossed the boundary, the carved symbols flared with copper light. The illumination spread from stone to stone until the entire circle blazed, creating a doorway of flame where solid forest had stood moments before. "Elena!" Magnus called in alarm, lunging forward only to find an invisible barrier preventing him from following. "I'm all right," she assured him, though uncertainty colored her voice. "The flames don't burn." From within the fiery doorway emerged a figure that caused all present to instinctively step back. An elderly woman with silver-white hair reaching her ankles approached with regal bearing. Despite her apparent age, she moved with fluid grace, her amber eyes bright with intelligence and power. Most striking was the faint copper glow emanating from her skin, as if bloodfire smoldered just beneath the surface. "At last you come, daughter of flame," the woman addressed Elena. "The blood moon approaches, and much remains unlearned." Elena bowed her head respectfully. "Are you the elder we seek? The last bloodfire wolf?" "I am Alara," the woman confirmed, "last of the old bloodline, keeper of forgotten knowledge." Her gaze shifted to Magnus and the others who remained outside the boundary. "You bring warriors to my peaceful domain, young flame." "Protectors," Elena corrected. "Friends who risked much to help me find you." Alara studied the group with ancient eyes. "The Alpha King himself serves as escort. Interesting." She approached the boundary, assessing Magnus with unnerving intensity. "You would surrender power for balance, rare indeed among your kind." "I seek what benefits all wolves," Magnus responded evenly, "even at personal cost." Something like approval flickered across Alara's weathered features. "Then you may enter my domain, Alpha King, along with your chosen guardians. But know this, within my boundaries, bloodfire supersedes Alpha authority. Here, you are guest, not ruler." With a gesture from Alara, the invisible barrier dissolved. Magnus crossed immediately to Elena's side, the others following with appropriate caution. The fiery doorway sealed behind them, leaving only the stone circle once more. "Come," Alara instructed, turning toward a path that hadn't been visible moments before. "Night falls quickly in these mountains." The path wound upward through ancient forest that gradually gave way to alpine meadows dotted with unusual flowers that glowed faintly in the gathering darkness. After an hour's climb, they reached a plateau dominated by a structure unlike any Elena had encountered in her readings. The dwelling appeared grown rather than built, walls formed from living trees that had somehow been coaxed into architectural shapes without losing their vitality. Glowing crystals provided soft illumination, and a central courtyard featured a pool fed by a mountain spring. The entire structure harmonized with its surroundings, rather than imposing upon them. "This is Sanctum," Alara explained, noticing Elena's wonder. created by the last gathering of bloodfire wolves before the Great Purge, a sanctuary hidden from those who would destroy our legacy. Inside, the dwelling revealed unexpected comfort and ancient knowledge. Shelves lined with texts older than any in Magnus's archives filled multiple rooms. Artifacts of forgotten power sat carefully preserved in crystal cases. Maps depicting territorial boundaries long since redrawn covered one circular chamber from floor to ceiling. "You've survived here alone all this time?" Elena asked as they gathered in the central chamber where a hearth burned with unusual copper-hued flames. "Not always alone," Alara corrected, preparing a steaming herbal infusion for her guests. "Others found sanctuary here throughout the centuries. Some stayed until death. Others ventured back into the world once the danger passed." Her expression darkened. "Few returned from such journeys. The Silver Covenant's reach extends far and deep." "How did you escape the purges?" Gunnar inquired, accepting the offered cup with uncharacteristic gentleness toward the elderly wolf. "I didn't," Alara replied simply. She pulled aside her silver hair to reveal a jagged scar circling her throat. "Silver Covenant assassins found me 70 years ago. Left me for dead after taking my voice. Bloodfire healing saved me, though my vocal cords never fully restored." Elena stared in horror at the brutal evidence of the Silver Covenant's methods. "Yet you remained hidden rather than fighting back." "Fighting requires warriors, child," Alara rasped. "I am keeper, not soldier. My duty was preserving knowledge until the prophesied one emerged." Her amber gaze fixed on Elena with millennia of waiting. "Until you." "I'm not sure I'm what you've been waiting for," Elena admitted. "I can barely control the bloodfire. It emerged once in desperation, but I cannot summon it at will." Alara nodded as if expecting this confession. "Bloodfire responds to need, not desire. Your imprisonment stunted your connection, but could not sever it. With proper guidance, you will master what sleeps within your blood." "We have little time," Magnus interjected. "The blood moon arrives in 3 weeks, and the Silver Covenant gathers forces against us." "Then we begin now," Alara decided, rising with surprising agility for one so ancient. "Tonight you rest. Tomorrow the blood fire awakens." Training with Alara proved unlike anything Elena had anticipated. Rather than the rigid discipline Magnus employed with his warriors, Alara's methods emphasized connection over control, understanding over mastery. Their first lesson began at dawn in the central courtyard. Alara instructed Elena to sit before the reflecting pool, hands resting palm upward on her knees. "Close your eyes," the elder Bloodfire Wolf directed. "Bloodfire is not separate from you, not a weapon to wield or power to control. It is you, the deepest expression of your wolf spirit connected to all who came before." Elena followed the guidance, focusing inward as she had when first reconnecting with her wolf. "I feel it like an ember buried beneath ashes." "Don't reach for it," Alara cautioned. "Remember instead your first transformation as a child, the joy of running free before your imprisonment, the relief of finally shifting after 20 years captive, the desperate need to protect your mate during battle." As Alara spoke, warmth spread through Elena's veins. Not the desperate heat of her previous manifestation, but a gentle, nurturing warmth that felt like coming home after a lifetime of wandering. "The bloodfire responds to emotion, not will," Alara explained. "Joy, love, protectiveness, righteous anger, these fuel the flame. Fear, doubt, grasping ambition, these smother it." When Elena opened her eyes, copper flames danced across her palms without burning her flesh. Unlike her previous experience, these flames felt controlled, an extension of herself rather than a separate force. "I understand now," Elena whispered, watching the fire respond to her breathing, expanding and contracting in perfect synchronization. Alara nodded approvingly. "The first lesson is learned. Bloodfire is not power to be controlled, but heritage to be embraced." Magnus observed these sessions from a respectful distance, recognizing that his alpha presence could interfere with Elena's connection to her bloodfire nature. Instead, he spent hours with Alara's extensive archives, studying the history deliberately erased from pack knowledge. The world was different before alpha ascendance, Alara explained one evening, showing Magnus chronicles predating the formation of territories. Alphas provided protection and strength, betas maintained traditions and mediated disputes, omegas healed and connected with spiritual realms. Bloodfire wolves ensured balance between all three, preventing any designation from dominating others. "What changed?" Magnus questioned, examining illustrations depicting ancient pack structures. "War," Alara answered simply. "Conflict with humans, then between wolf factions. Alpha strength became prioritized for survival. Gradually, other designations were subjugated. Bloodfire wolves who advocated for balance were branded traitors to their kind." Magnus absorbed this information with growing disquiet. "Everything I was taught about pack hierarchy was built on deliberate deception." "Not deception," Alara corrected. "Evolution for survival. But survival achieved, evolution must continue, or stagnation leads to decline." As Elena's training progressed, so did her understanding of the bloodfire legacy. Under Alara's guidance, she learned to manifest copper flames at will, to shape them for various purposes, and most remarkably, to connect with ancestral spirits. "The blood moon enhances this connection," Alara explained during their second week. "Through ritual and focused intent, you will open a permanent channel between living wolves and our ancestors. Their wisdom will once again guide pack decisions, balancing alpha strength with generational knowledge." The Silver Covenant fears this most of all, Elena realized. Not just the diminishment of alpha power, but accountability to those who came before. "Those who abuse power always fear accountability," Alara confirmed, "which brings us to your most important lesson." The ancient wolf led Elena to a secluded grotto behind the main structure, where a small pool reflected the mountain sky. "Look into the waters and call upon bloodfire with intent to see truth." Elena knelt beside the pool, summoning copper flame that danced across her fingertips before touching the water's surface. The liquid illuminated from within, images forming like memories given physical form. "Father!" Elena gasped as a familiar face appeared in the glowing waters, older than she remembered, lined with years of hardship, but unmistakably the man whose absence had shaped her life. "He lives," Alara confirmed softly. "Imprisoned like you, though in a different type of cage." The vision shifted, showing a man working in what appeared to be a Silver Covenant compound. Guards watched as he translated ancient texts, his hands bearing the marks of punishment when progress proved too slow. "They captured him before coming for you," Alara explained. "His research into bloodfire threatened their control. Rather than killing him, they exploited his knowledge while keeping you as leverage for his cooperation." "And Ravenna?" Elena whispered, watching as the vision shifted to show her stepmother in a Silver Covenant chamber, receiving instructions from a council of grim-faced elders. "A willing accomplice at first," Alara narrated as the vision unfolded. "Later, a prisoner of her own making. When ordered to kill you upon reaching maturity, she chose imprisonment instead. A complicated evil, cruel enough to cage you, not monstrous enough to execute you as commanded." Elena watched these revelations with growing horror and understanding. "She told them I died of illness while keeping me hidden. She wasn't just cruel, she was playing a dangerous game between her Silver Covenant masters and her own conscience." "The truth is rarely pure and never simple," Alara quoted, "especially in times of conflict between old powers and new possibilities." When Elena related these discoveries to Magnus, his tactical mind immediately grasped the implications. Your father's knowledge could be crucial in confronting the Silver Covenant, and Ravenna may prove a valuable source of information if properly interrogated. "We need to return," Elena agreed, though reluctance colored her tone. 2 weeks with Alara had brought more peace and understanding than she'd known in decades, "The blood moon approaches, and preparations must be made," Alara announced her decision that evening as they gathered for the evening meal. "I will accompany you to Northwind Fortress," she stated, surprising even Elena. "The ritual requires a guide who has performed it before, and after centuries of hiding, perhaps it's time for the elder bloodfire to stand beside the new." Their departure from Sanctum came with solemn ceremony. Alara gathered sacred herbs, ancient texts, and crystalline vessels containing what she described as essence of ancestral flame. Most precious was a circlet fashioned from silver and copper, set with amber stones that seemed to capture firelight within their depths. "The bloodfire crown," Alara explained, carefully wrapping the artifact, "worn by our kind during the ritual of renewal, not seen in the outside world for 500 years. They traveled swiftly, Elena and Alara in wolf form running tirelessly despite the elder's apparent age. When shifting to human form during rest periods, Elena noticed that Alara appeared incrementally younger with each transformation, as if proximity to another bloodfire wolf rejuvenated her ancient spirit. "Bloodfire wolves draw strength from one another," Alara explained when questioned. "In the ancient times, we lived in small communities, extending our natural lifespan through shared energy. Isolation has been my greatest hardship, more than Silver Covenant persecution." Their return to Northwind Fortress created immediate sensation. Guards on the battlements howled in recognition as the distinctive copper wolves approached, Magnus's massive black form running protectively alongside. Word spread rapidly, pack members lining the entry path to witness not one, but 2 bloodfire wolves entering their territory. Alaric awaited in the main courtyard, his elderly face alight with scholarly excitement upon seeing Alara. "The Elder of Frost Peak," he breathed, bowing deeply. "Your existence has been theoretical at best in our records. History becomes legend, legend becomes myth," Alara responded with the hint of a smile. "Yet here I stand, neither myth nor legend, but flesh and blood and fire." Urgent counsel awaited their return. Valkyrie reported increased Silver Covenant activity along all borders, with forces gathering that suggested imminent attack. More concerning were reports of divisions within allied packs, some supporting the traditional hierarchy, while others advocated for the changes Elena represented. "Civil conflict threatens even as external enemies gather," Gunnar summarized grimly. "We face war on multiple fronts." "Then we change the battlefield," Elena proposed, her voice carrying newfound authority gained through Alara's training. "The Blood Moon ritual must proceed regardless of Silver Covenant threats. But first, we need information only 2 people possess." "Your father and Ravenna," Magnus surmised. Elena nodded. "I believe both are held at Silver Covenant headquarters in the Eastern Vale. A raid would be expected, but a smaller infiltration might succeed." "Dangerous," Valkyrie assessed, "but potentially valuable. Your father's knowledge of bloodfire combined with Ravenna's understanding of Covenant operations could provide critical advantage." The rescue mission was planned with meticulous precision. Magnus insisted on leading personally despite council objections, selecting only his most trusted elite guards for the operation. Elena would remain at Northwind under Alara's protection, continuing preparations for the Blood Moon ritual. The night before Magnus departed, he came to Elena's chambers. Though their mate bond had grown stronger daily, both had respected boundaries established by Elena's need for emotional healing after decades of isolation. Tonight, something had changed in both their demeanors. "The mission carries significant risk," Magnus acknowledged, standing before her with uncharacteristic uncertainty. "If I don't return..." Elena silenced him by closing the distance between them, her hands resting against his chest. "You will return," she stated with quiet conviction, "and I will be waiting, not just as ally or potential Luna, but as your true mate in every sense." The kiss they shared transcended physical connection, their wolves recognizing each other on primal levels beyond human comprehension. The mate bond, already strong, crystallized into something unbreakable as copper flame danced across Elena's skin without command, responding to emotion rather than will. Magnus departed at dawn with his strike team, while Elena threw herself into ritual preparations. Alara directed the construction of a ceremonial circle on the fortress's highest point, aligning carefully with celestial positions the blood moon would occupy. The ritual requires physical representation of all wolf designations, Alara explained as they worked. Alpha, Beta, Omega, and Bloodfire at cardinal points, forming channels for ancestral connection. Will they cooperate? Elena questioned, thinking of traditional alphas who might resist participation. The blood moon speaks to all wolves regardless of politics, Alara assured her. Those meant to stand within the circle will feel its call when the time comes. 7 days passed with no word from Magnus. Elena maintained outward calm while her inner anxiety mounted. Scouts reported increased Silver Covenant movement near fortress borders, suggesting imminent conflict. Allied pack representatives arrived daily, seeking guidance or offering support as the blood moon approached. On the 8th night, as Elena stood upon the battlements scanning the darkness for any sign of returning wolves, distant howls carried on the wind. Not the coordinated signals of Magnus's elite guard, but the chaotic cries of wolves in combat. They're under attack, Valkyrie confirmed, joining Elena at her observation point. Northwestern approach, near Ghost River Crossing. Prepare rescue party, Elena commanded, already moving toward the fortress gates. Full elite guard complement, medical support following. With respect, Luna, Valkyrie countered, using the title despite Elena's unconfirmed status. Your safety is paramount, especially this close to the blood moon. My mate fights for his life while attempting to rescue my father, Elena replied, copper flames beginning to dance along her fingertips without conscious summoning. I will not cower behind walls while others risk everything. The rescue force departed moments later, Elena and Valkyrie leading 30 elite warriors through moonlit forest toward the sounds of battle. As they approached, Elena's enhanced senses detected multiple wolf packs engaged in chaotic combat. Magnus's smaller force fought defensively around 2 human figures. One elderly man whose posture suggested injury, another woman with hands bound. My father, Elena breathed, recognizing him despite the decades of separation. And Ravenna. Without awaiting Valkyrie's strategy, Elena shifted to wolf form. Her copper transformation triggered immediate reaction from combatants, momentary stillness falling over the battlefield as all eyes turned toward the approaching Bloodfire wolf. Elena used this hesitation to advantage, racing directly toward Magnus's position while Northwind warriors engaged the Silver Covenant forces. The fighting resumed with renewed ferocity, Silver Covenant wolves clearly targeting Elena above all others. As 3 opponents converged on her position, copper flame erupted from Elena's fur, forming the protective barrier she had manifested during her first Bloodfire awakening. Spirit wolves materialized within the flames, ancient guardians responding to Bloodfire's call. Magnus's battle-worn face revealed equal parts relief and pride as Elena reached his position. Perfect timing, he managed despite visible injuries. The extraction became complicated. Elena shifted to human form beside her wounded father, maintaining the Bloodfire barrier around their position. Father, she whispered, touching his face with gentle wonder. You're alive. Eldrick, once a proud scholar and now a battered prisoner, gazed upon his daughter with tearful recognition. My Elena, they told me you were dead. For 20 years I believed. Later, Magnus interrupted, shifting forms to better defend their position. We're still surrounded. Ravenna stood slightly apart, her bound hands and defiant posture suggesting reluctant alliance rather than willing rescue. The Covenant leadership follows behind the initial force, she warned. Their Grand Elder comes personally to prevent the Blood Moon ritual. Elena assessed their tactical situation with clarity, born from centuries of military texts studied during imprisonment. We can't outrun them with wounded. We make stand here, using river as defensive barrier. The battle that followed would later be recorded in pack histories as the Ghost River Stand, where 30 Northwind warriors held off over 100 Silver Covenant soldiers. At its center fought the Bloodfire Wolf, copper flames creating both shield and weapon as she defended her recovered father and wounded mate. As dawn approached, reinforcements from allied packs arrived, having received Valkyrie's emergency summons. The Silver Covenant forces retreated strategically, disappearing into forest shadows with practiced coordination. "This isn't victory," Magnus cautioned as they gathered their wounded. "Merely postponement. They'll regroup before the blood moon." Elena knelt beside her father, who, despite his weakened condition, had begun treating wounded warriors with unexpected healing skill. "You're an Omega," she realized, watching his hands glow with subtle healing energy. "The secret that began everything," Eldrick confirmed sadly. An Omega scholar who discovered Bloodfire legacy while researching his daughter's unusual copper wolf. The Silver Covenant couldn't allow such knowledge to spread. "So they imprisoned you and ordered Ravenna to kill me," Elena completed, pieces finally aligning. "Ravenna refused their directive," Eldrick clarified, glancing toward his former mate who stood under guard nearby. "Her imprisonment solution was cruel compromise, fulfilling their demand to remove you from public view while keeping you alive. Her periodic reports of your failing health satisfied them for years. Until Magnus found me," Elena concluded. "Setting in motion what cannot be undone," Ravenna interjected, her proud bearing intact despite her prisoner status. "The Bloodfire returns. The hierarchy trembles. Change comes whether we desire it or not." The return procession to Northwind Fortress moved slowly, accommodating wounded warriors and reunited family members experiencing emotional overwhelm. Elena walked between her father and her mate, Copper Wolf and Alpha King, past and future converging in her unexpected present. Alara awaited their return, her ancient eyes widening at the sight of Eldrick. "The Omega Scholar," she breathed with surprising recognition. "Your research reached even my isolated sanctuary decades ago." "The Elder of Frost Peak," Eldrick responded with equal wonder. "I believed you, legend, not reality." "Reality and legend dance closer than most recognize," Alara replied cryptically. Her attention shifted to Ravenna, assessment in her gaze. "The reluctant jailer comes willingly into her former prisoner's domain. Interesting choice." "Not choice, but necessity," Ravenna corrected stiffly. "The Silver Covenant no longer offers protection, only punishment for my failure to eliminate the Bloodfire heir." With Magnus's wounds tended and Eldrick settled in comfortable quarters, attention turned to Ravenna's formal hearing. Unlike traditional pack tribunals conducted solely by Alpha authority, this proceeding incorporated elements Alara suggested from ancient practice. Representatives from all designations participated: Alpha, Beta, Omega, and Bloodfire forming a judgment circle. Ravenna stood at the center, proud despite her circumstances. "I accept responsibility for imprisonment of Elena against her will," she stated without preamble. "I deny responsibility for the broader Silver Covenant agenda. I made an unconscionable choice between two evils: imprisonment or execution of a child whose only crime was her copper wolf." "You stole 20 years of my life," Elena noted, her voice steady rather than accusatory. "Years of development, experience, connection." "I preserved your life when ordered to end it," Ravenna countered. "Imperfect mercy is still mercy." Magnus leaned forward, Alpha authority evident despite the shared tribunal structure. "Your knowledge of Silver Covenant operations could prove valuable in the coming conflict. Cooperation might mitigate your sentence." "Their Grand Elder comes with their full council," Ravenna revealed after consideration. 7 elders, 30 elite guards, countless warriors gathered from loyal packs. They will arrive before the blood moon with one purpose: prevent the ritual that would restore ancestral connection and diminish their power. As the tribunal concluded with Ravenna sentenced to supervised rehabilitation rather than imprisonment, preparations for both ritual and battle accelerated. Eldrick's knowledge proved invaluable, his decades translating ancient texts for the Silver Covenant, providing insight into Bloodfire capabilities unknown even to Alara. The Blood Moon ritual creates permanent connection between living wolves and ancestral spirits, he explained during strategy sessions. but it offers additional power, the ability to share strength between designations. Alphas, betas, omegas, all contributing their natural abilities to communal defense. Unity rather than hierarchy, Magnus summarized thoughtfully. Revolutionary indeed. 3 days before the blood moon, scouts reported Silver Covenant forces establishing positions surrounding Northwind Fortress, not attacking immediately, but creating perimeter that would prevent ritual participation from allied packs. They hoped to isolate us, Valkyrie assessed, prevent gathering of all designations required for ritual completion. Then we break their perimeter, Magnus decided, military strategy overriding diplomatic consideration. Targeted strikes to create corridors for allies to reach fortress grounds before moonrise. The battle plans formed with Elena's surprising tactical contribution. Her years studying military history from tower imprisonment now translated to innovative strategy that even veteran warriors like Gunnar respected. Designated strike teams would create 3 separate corridors through Silver Covenant lines, each protected by synchronized attacks that would divide enemy attention. As preparations reached final stages, Elena sought private moment with Magnus in their now shared chambers. The mate bond had deepened through combat shared and dangers faced together, creating partnership that transcended traditional Alpha-Luna dynamics. "If something happens during battle," she began hesitantly, "if I fall before completing the ritual..." Magnus silenced her with gentle touch. 20 years imprisoned couldn't defeat you. Silver Covenant forces won't succeed where Ravenna failed. Nevertheless, Elena persisted, Elara must complete the ritual regardless. The Bloodfire legacy must continue, even if I cannot carry it forward. Magnus studied her with depth of understanding few would expect from traditional Alpha. "Nothing will prevent you from completing what you were born to do," he promised. "I stake my life on ensuring your path remains clear." The day before Blood Moon brought final preparations and solemn ceremony. Elara and Eldrick coordinated ritual requirements while Magnus deployed warriors along strategic defensive positions. Allied packs arrived continuously throughout the day, fighting through increasingly determined Silver Covenant resistance. That evening, in quiet moment before impending battle, Magnus formally presented Elena to his assembled pack, not as rescued captive or potential Luna, but as his equal partner and true mate. The ceremony, traditionally dominated by Alpha claiming, incorporated bloodfire elements Elara suggested from ancient practice. "Before Moon and Mountain, I recognize Elena as my mate," Magnus proclaimed, his powerful voice carrying across gathered witnesses. "Not through dominance, but through respect. Not through tradition, but through choice. My strength joins her wisdom. My authority balances with her compassion." Elena stepped forward, copper flames dancing subtly along her fingertips as she completed the traditional response with significant modification. "Before Moon and Mountain, I recognize Magnus as my mate, not through submission but through partnership, not through obligation but through love. My legacy joins his leadership, my fire balances with his strength." As dawn broke on the Blood Moon Day, the Silver Covenant launched their full assault. No longer content with perimeter containment, they advanced on Northwind Fortress from all directions, clearly intent on preventing ritual completion regardless of casualties inflicted. Magnus commanded the main defensive force, while Elena coordinated from the ritual site atop the fortress's highest tower. Elara and Eldrick made final preparations, positioning ceremonial elements precisely according to astronomical alignments that would maximize connection when Blood Moon reached its zenith. "We need representatives of all designations," Elara reminded, as battle raged below. "Alpha, Beta, Omega, and Bloodfire forming perfect square beneath Moon's center." "They will come," Elena assured, watching allied packs fighting through Silver Covenant lines to reach fortress gates. "Those meant to stand within circle will arrive when needed." The battle intensified as afternoon faded toward evening. Silver Covenant forces pressed forward with fanatical determination, their Grand Elder visible on distant ridge directing attack with calculated precision. Magnus and his elite warriors held the main gate against overwhelming numbers, while Gunnar defended southern approach with smaller but equally determined force. As sunset approached, a disturbing development emerged. Silver Covenant soldiers targeted not just fortress defenses, but specifically any wolves displaying Omega characteristics. Their strategy became clear: prevent ritual completion by eliminating required designation representatives. They know the ritual requirements, Eldrick realized with horror. They've studied my translations all these years, preparing for this moment. Elena assessed the situation with remarkable calm, copper flames now permanently dancing across her skin as Bloodfire responded to imminent moonrise. Change of plans, she decided. We bring ritual to battleground rather than battleground to ritual. The audacious strategy formed quickly. Rather than completing ceremony in protected tower location, Elena proposed moving entire ritual to central courtyard, where defenders and attackers alike would witness the transformation. Alara initially resisted such exposure, but reluctantly agreed when alternatives seemed increasingly impossible. As Blood Moon began its ascent, Elena stood in Fortress Courtyard, wearing the ancient Bloodfire crown Alara had preserved for centuries. Magnus fought his way back from front lines to take alpha position in Ritual Square. Allied Pac Beta representative arrived moments later, bloodied but determined. Only Omega position remained vacant as Silver Covenant forces breached outer defenses. My father, Elena realized, scanning the chaos for Eldrick's location. Valkyrie reported him trapped in healing quarters, surrounded by advancing enemies, specifically targeting his position. I'll retrieve him, Magnus volunteered, already turning toward danger. No, Elena countermanded, surprising even herself with authority that superseded Alpha Command. You must hold Alpha position. I will bring my father to complete our circle. Before Magnus could protest, Elena's copper wolf form manifested with unprecedented smooth transition. Bloodfire erupted around her in protective cocoon as she raced toward healing quarters, spirit wolves materializing to clear her path through astonished Silver Covenant soldiers. She found Eldrick defending wounded with unexpected courage, his Omega healing abilities weaponized to incapacitate attackers through overwhelmed nervous systems. Daughter, he greeted, relieved beyond words at her arrival. The moon rises. The circle awaits its final member, Elena confirmed, protecting their retreat with Bloodfire barrier that repelled increasingly desperate attacks. They reached courtyard as Blood Moon achieved perfect alignment overhead. The celestial body glowed crimson against night sky, bathing fortress grounds in otherworldly light that seemed to pulse with ancient rhythm. Magnus, the Beta representative, and Alara held positions marking 3 points of ceremonial square, leaving final position for Eldrick's Omega energy. As Eldrick completed the formation, Elena took central position beneath Blood Moon's direct light. The Bloodfire crown gleamed copper and silver, amber stones capturing moonlight and amplifying it through crystalline structure. Elena raised her hands, copper flames extending from fingertips toward moon above, as she began ritual words Alara had taught during their training. By blood and fire, by moon and earth, by ancestors remembered and descendants awaited, I call upon the wisdom that came before and shall come again. The Silver Covenant Grand Elder himself led final desperate charge into courtyard, flanked by remaining council members, intent on preventing ritual completion. Magnus and defensive forces engaged them directly, creating protective barrier around ritual participants who continued despite chaos surrounding them. The division ends, Elena continued, voice gaining strength as Bloodfire responded to ritual energies. Alpha strength, Beta balance, Omega insight, Bloodfire connection, not separate but unified, not ranked but equal. Copper flames extended from Elena toward each cardinal participant, creating visible connections that pulsed with shared energy. From Magnus flowed commanding authority, from the Beta representative came diplomatic wisdom, from Eldrick radiated healing compassion, and from Alara emerged ancestral memory. All converged within Elena, whose Bloodfire crown now blazed with supernatural illumination. The ancestors returned to guide, Elena proclaimed, as Blood Moon reached perfect zenith. The balance restores to heal. The truth emerges to transform. Light erupted from Ritual Circle, expanding outward in concentric rings that passed through all present, defenders and attackers alike. Where this light touched, wolves momentarily glimpsed ancestral spirits standing alongside living counterparts. Alphas saw legendary leaders whose wisdom tempered strength. Betas witnessed mediators whose diplomacy prevented ancient wars. Omegas recognized healers whose compassion sustained generations. Most significantly affected were Silver Covenant members. As ancestral connection established, they faced direct confrontation with spirits of those whose legacy they had corrupted. The Grand Elder himself collapsed beneath weight of accountability, spanning centuries of deliberate distortion. The battle ceased not through victory, but through transformation. Wolves of all designations stood transfixed as ancestral wisdom flowed through renewed connection, restoring collective memory deliberately erased from pack knowledge. Understanding replaced conflict. Recognition superseded division as fundamental truth emerged from centuries of suppression. Elena remained at Ritual's center, Bloodfire now extending beyond her physical form to connect with every wolf present, regardless of pack affiliation or designation. Through this connection flowed not dominance, but belonging, not hierarchy, but community, fundamentally restructuring pack consciousness according to original design. When Blood Moon finally passed its zenith and ritual energies gradually subsided, the courtyard held not opposing armies, but unified wolves experiencing shared revelation. The Silver Covenant Grand Elder and remaining council members knelt in position of surrender, not to Magnus's alpha authority, but to restored ancestral wisdom that rendered their organization obsolete. "It is done," Alara announced softly. Ancestral connection now permanently established through ritual completion. The blood fire returns, the balance restores, the circle completes. Elena lowered her arms as blood fire gradually receded, though copper glow remained subtly visible beneath her skin. Magnus approached with reverence previously unknown to the powerful Alpha, extending hand to help her rise from ritual position. "You've changed everything," he observed, wonder evident in his expression. "We've remembered everything," Elena corrected gently. "There's a difference." The aftermath brought transformation beyond battlefield resolution. Wolves previously segregated by designation began natural reorganization into balanced packs, where alpha strength, beta mediation, and omega insight received equal validation. The Silver Covenant disbanded not through defeat, but through irrelevance, as ancestral connection rendered their fear-based control unnecessary. 5 years later, Elena stood on Northwind Fortress balcony, watching twin daughters playing in courtyard below. Sienna and Nova, both displaying copper highlights in their dark hair, practiced small bloodfire manifestations under Alara's patient guidance. At 3 years old, they already demonstrated remarkable connection to ancestral wisdom that now guided all wolf packs. Magnus joined her at balcony railing, his hand resting naturally on her rounded belly where their son grew, due in 3 months. Though still powerful Alpha King, his leadership now incorporated council representing all designations, decisions reflecting balanced perspective rather than dominant authority. "Sometimes I wonder," Elena mused, leaning into his solid presence, "if Ravenna had never imprisoned me, would any of this have happened? Would the bloodfire have awakened? Would pack structure have transformed?" "Suffering either breaks or forges," Magnus reflected. "You transformed 20 years of imprisonment into preparation for changing our world. The tower meant to be your prison became your training ground." Elena watched as her father emerged from healing quarters to join granddaughter's lesson. Eldric's Omega abilities had flourished in supportive environment, his healing techniques now taught to wolves of all designations with appropriate aptitude. Even Ravenna found redemption through community service, her administrative skills redirected toward constructive governance. "The most remarkable transformation isn't out there," Elena observed, gesturing toward rebuilt packs and balanced leadership now standard across territories. It's within us, the recognition that strength comes in many forms, that leadership requires wisdom beyond dominance, that balance serves everyone better than hierarchy. Magnus's amber eyes reflected firelight as evening approached, his expression thoughtful. My father once told me, true leadership isn't about maintaining power, but recognizing when power needs to evolve. I never understood until watching you emerge from that tower, stronger for your imprisonment, wiser for your isolation. Elena turned in his embrace, copper highlights in her amber eyes catching sunset light. Sometimes the thing that nearly breaks us is what makes us unbreakable. Sometimes being trapped means we're being forged into something stronger. Below them, their daughters created small copper flames that danced together in harmonious pattern, symbolic of future where blood-fire legacy continued through new generation. Ancestral wolves, now visible to all through permanent connection Elena established, watched over children with protective guidance spanning centuries of accumulated wisdom. You spent 20 years in a tower, Magnus said softly, his hand gentle against her cheek. And those 20 years made you the Luna our people needed, made you the mother our children deserve, made you the partner fate intended for me all along. Elena smiled at truth spanning both personal and universal transformation. The bloodfire returned not to dominate, but to balance, not to rule, but to remind, not to change, but to restore what was always meant to be. As night fell across Northwind territory, copper flames illuminated windows throughout fortress and surrounding settlements. Not through command, but through choice, wolves of all designations maintained small bloodfire manifestations after sunset, symbolic connection to restored heritage and balanced future. The light reflected against mountains that had witnessed centuries of division, now transformed through remembering rather than forgetting, through connection rather than separation, through balance rather than dominance. In Moonlight Courtyard below, Elena's daughters completed their lesson with ancient words now taught to all wolf children regardless of designation. By blood and fire, by moon and earth, we honor those who came before and those who will follow after. In balance we find strength, in unity we find peace, in remembering we find our way forward.